Cheers, guys! English Rabisco here. And after nearly 10 years out, Windows 8.1 is finally losing all support from Microsoft forever. Yep, today, the 10th of January of 2023. It has a pretty complicated legacy as it was an improvement upon the previous version 8, but wasn't much of an improvement as it was almost the same. I mean, it's in the name, 8.1, but it still deserves to be put to eternal rest, and let's pay tribute to this operating system in this video. First of all, to summarize Windows 8.1, well, like I said, the previous version 8 came out in 2012, and it was quite a disaster, with its new interface creating an insane learning curve. Not to mention the start screen, which was not very great, because it kind of left people with a traditional mouse and keyboard layout behind, since it was geared more towards touchscreens, and it was so different. Its Metro apps were also a huge mess, with two versions of the same app through two different systems, with the Microsoft Store apps and the conventional desktop applications. So yeah, Microsoft knew they screwed up so bad, and they had to fix it. So on October the 17th of 2013, just a few days shy of a year from when 8 came out, Windows 8.1 became available to the public. The main new thing about it was that it brought back the Start button, which was basically absent on Windows 8 unless you had to move to the very end of the corner. But unfortunately, it didn't go so far as to bring the Start menu back, which was familiar among users. Windows 8.1 was a free upgrade for 8 users who eventually had to upgrade it if they wanted to continue to get updates after a few years. The search feature was also updated where you could search for everything on your computer or on the internet very easily. Also, tweaks to the start screen were made where you could look at all the apps you had on your computer. And Windows 8.1 also added support for 3D printing, which was quite a new thing at the time. I remember it almost seemed like a fantasy, sci-fi to me, like being able to click one button on your computer with a 3D model and stuff and it'll just like print? That was crazy at the time. But now 3D printing is way more mainstream. You can probably find a 3D printer at your school library and even use it too. Maybe you already have one. With all that out of the way, Windows 8.1, however, was still basically Windows 8, with its flatness and boring design and its user-unfriendly interface. Like I said, if you used a mouse or keyboard, which I'm sure the vast majority of people using a computer at the time did and still do, it was hard to use the start screen because of the huge tiles and stuff. Sure, it looked cool with live tiles and widgets and stuff, but it still looked like something you would find out of a phone, not a desktop computer. Also, it was inconvenient having to go to another screen if you just wanted to open some apps compared to the start menu of before. Windows 8.1 also didn't fix the messy Metro app situation, like the apps from the Microsoft Store that looked like mobile phone apps on desktop computers, and the regular desktop apps. The two didn't mix well because they didn't communicate with each other. It was hard to figure out how to even close those Metro-style apps. Like, what was that even about? Not to mention having two settings apps. The Metro settings and the control panel was just really confusing. Windows 8.1 also made it harder to create a local account on your computer. They really started trying to push the Microsoft account on you, whether you wanted it or not. But I'm sure that there are some who say this was the last clean Windows, in a sense. The ones that have come out after this have been way more bloated in comparison. Anyways, I think we can see how unpopular 8 and 8.1 were when even its predecessor Windows 7 had a higher market share than these two, even when it lost support from Microsoft in 2020. Even today, at least among Windows users, Windows 7 still has a significantly higher market share than compared to 8.1, being used among 16.97% of Windows users as of last month, compared to 8.1's 2.6%. Like I said, it's older and has been unsupported for nearly 3 years at this point. I also want to talk a little bit about my personal memories with Windows 8.1. I upgraded to 8.1 from 8 on my old computer, and it was okay. It was an improvement from Windows 8 like I said, but I still didn't really like it. I definitely thought that it and 8 in general was quite a downgrade from 7 because of how boring it was, how flat it looked and everything. If I remember correctly, this is when I stopped becoming interested in technology for quite a while because of how boring it was. Having the stop button back was nice, as 8 was so confusing, but other than that, there was not much good I can say about 8.1. Its weird mashup of phone-like apps and desktop apps and everything really confused me when I was younger. And I remember, I was really excited for 10 to come out and upgrade from the boring and flat Windows 8 and leave it in the past. So to end things all off, Windows 8.1, with all its faults, still was influential in operating systems and computers today. It helped reinforce that flat design would be here to stay in interface design, at least for a little while, of course. It tried to bridge the gap between mobile devices, like phones and tablets and desktop computers, but it failed spectacularly. Because no one wants to use phone apps on a computer, really. And Windows 8.1 was a stepping stone for Microsoft to see its failures and release a better UI with its successor. So let us remember Windows 8.1, all the memories we had with it, even if they were bad, and remember it for its importance and quite the change it brought upon users. I am English Rabisco, and I am putting Windows 8.1 to rest.